We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by our good friends at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag right now, guys. Use our code UGA when you sign up for a new account, and your first bet is going to be fully covered, all the way up to $500. So jump on this deal, guys, while you can. It won't last forever. Jump on it today. And all week here on the Glory UGA podcast, we've been talking Georgia Ole Miss, big game, top 10 matchup here in Athens on Saturday between the hedges. And yesterday, I posted my deep dive preview breaking down this game between the Dogs and the Rebels from every possible angle. So go check that out if you haven't already. But today, it's time to wrap this conversation up by identifying my keys to a Georgia victory and by revealing my final prediction on who will win this big top 10 matchup here in Athens on Saturdays. But before we do any of that, guys, if you are a diehard Georgia fan, you have come to the right place because this channel is 100% designed for all you Georgia diehards. So do yourself a solid, do me a solid, do everyone a solid by subscribing right now. Turn the notifications on so you don't miss any of the content coming your way the rest of this season and beyond. Like the video and comment. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday? Do you think the Dogs can pull off this top 10 victory, or will Ole Miss knock off Georgia for the second consecutive year? I'd love to hear from each and every one of you guys. But all right, guys, every week, about this time every week, I give you my keys to a Georgia victory, a checklist, if you will. If Georgia does each of these things that I'm about to break down for you, checks off all these boxes, the Dogs will emerge victorious on Saturday. So let's dive in here, guys. Key number one. For me, this is the single biggest key of the game. Georgia's got to be able to run the football in this game. That's important in every game for this Georgia team because that's our identity. It's pretty clear halfway through the season that that's who we are, especially on the opposite side of the football. And if we are going to score enough points to find a way to win this game and get some measure of revenge against Ole Miss, the ground game is going to be the driving force. You start there, you can work play action, try some vertical shots down the field off of that, but it starts and ends with the ground game. We know how explosive Ole Miss is. I broke that down for you in my deep dive preview. Again, if you want a more comprehensive breakdown of this game, go check out that video, and then you can come back here and watch this. But we know how easily this Ole Miss team can score with their explosive ability. Arguably the most explosive offense in all of college football. So it's important for us to not allow Ole Miss to force us to play their game. You don't want to get in a shootout with this Ole Miss team. Now, we've shown that we can win different types of games this season, right? We've shown going on the road to Knoxville against Tennessee that we can win that type of game, a game that gets up in the 40s. But we don't really want to press our luck here against a team that does that by trade. That's what they do. That's their hallmark. Well, if you run the football, what does that do for you? It allows us to force Ole Miss to play our game. If we can run the football, we control the clock. If you control the clock, you limit possessions. If you limit Ole Miss's possessions, you limit their scoring opportunities. If you limit their scoring opportunities, you limit the number of points you have to score. A Georgia offense that really hasn't been explosive all year, that's had to grind out yards and points, you limit the number of points that you have to score to win this football game. So for me, key number one, priority number one is Georgia's got to be able to run the football and not just okay, kind of sort of run the football. I'm talking about run the football at will in this game. If Georgia can do that, I really like their chances to knock off Ole Miss. My second key to the game, honestly, guys, I think you could really sum this game up and say, one of the keys to the game, Georgia got to run the football, and Georgia has to limit Ole Miss's explosive plays. You could really limit it to that. I'll go a little deeper than that, but limiting Ole Miss's ability to generate explosive plays is absolutely a huge key to a Georgia victory in this game. Again, we have shown that we can win a shootout. We went on the road to Tennessee and did that. But I don't want to make a habit out of that. I don't think this is a team that is going to do that week in and week out. So I think it's really important for this Georgia team on Saturday to keep this game against Ole Miss a relatively low scoring affair. I'm not talking about like a 9-6 game. That's not what we're talking about here, but relatively low scoring in the mid to high 20s potentially. But that's easier said than done. Trust me, guys, it is. If you've watched this Ole Miss team play, you know what I'm talking about. The Ole Miss offense, I would say, is the polar opposite of the Auburn offense that we saw a week ago. Not so much stylistically. Auburn would love to do what Ole Miss does. They just can't do it. Auburn is essentially the least explosive offense in the SEC. And now we're going from playing that type of offense, a very mundane offense that just can't generate explosive plays, to playing one of the, if not the most explosive offense in the entire country. Guys, right now, Ole Miss is number one nationally, number one in the country in plays of 30 or more yards. Even if we are able to run the ball and control the clock the way that I hope that we can in this game, the way I think that we can in this game, that advantage can absolutely be mitigated by Ole Miss hitting explosive plays. We can't keep it a lower scoring affair if they are hitting explosive after explosive. We can't. Time of possession doesn't even matter at that point if it only takes them 42 seconds to hit an explosive play down the field and score a touchdown. That will also allow them to force us to play their game, and that's a game that we do not want to play on Saturday. So that is a key. Those are my two big keys, guys. Georgia run the football on offense. Georgia limit Ole Miss's explosive plays on defense. If we do those two things, I really like our chances to come out victorious in this game. But let's take it a little further than that, guys. Okay, so obviously, yes, we've established we need to limit Ole Miss's explosive plays. How do you do that? How do you do that? Let's get a little more specific here. Ole Miss spreads you out, guys. You've watched Ole Miss play. You know what they do. They spread you out, and they do a really good job of getting the ball in the hands of their dynamic playmakers in space. They want to get these guys in space with the ball. And when that happens, because it's going to happen, guys, that's what they do. It is imperative that we bring guys down in open space. It's also imperative that if we get Chambliss, if we get him in trouble in the backfield, it's imperative that we get him on the ground. We had a number of chances to put up a couple of sacks against Jackson Arnold in the second half of that game last weekend, but we couldn't quite get the guy on the ground. There were even a couple of chances in the first half where we just really could not quite convert. We pressured him, we affected him, but we didn't get him on the ground. We didn't create those negative plays. So if we have a chance to put up some negative plays, to sack Chambliss, we've got to get him down on the ground. Allow them, we can't allow a potential sack that might be a loss of 8 yards to turn into a gain of 3 yards. There's a big difference between 2nd and 18 and 2nd and 7. And we can also, if they get the ball in space to some of these dynamic playmakers, we can't allow like a 7-yard RPO to turn into a 53-yard touchdown catch and run. We can't let those things happen. We've got to tackle these guys in space, get them on the ground, keep it in front of us, and do not allow them to create explosive plays with that catch and run ability, which they certainly do have. A number of guys on their team can do that. All right. And number 4, my last big key to this game. This could be a key to any game. Of course it could. But in a game like this, I do think it takes on some outsized importance. Georgia needs to win the turnover battle. Ideally, Georgia needs to just, I don't know, not turn the football over. Like more so than creating turnovers ourselves, we need to make sure we do not turn the football over and give Ole Miss chances to put up some points, give them extra possessions. Again, we don't want this game played in the high 30s. I don't think that's in our best interest. Ole Miss does, though. That's what they want, but we do not. It's to our advantage, again, if this game is played in the mid to maybe high 20s, somewhere in that range. But if we start turning the ball over and we start giving Ole Miss some short fields, setting up quick scores for the Rebels, that obviously plays into their hands. That allows them to get the score elevated, which is, again, something we do not want to do. That puts us in a position to have to potentially move away from what I believe is our greatest advantage in this game, running the football and try to play keep up. And Ole Miss, guys, they're a good football team. I'm not trying to tell you they're not good. They are a good football team, and they're too good for us to be if we turn the ball over. If we do what we did against Alabama and fumble the football inside our red zone, you give them an easy score. They're too good to be if we do those kind of things. So it's really important, yes, to win the turnover battle, but more importantly, just don't turn the football over. I think that's a big key, specifically in this football game. All right, so check off those 4 boxes, and I wholeheartedly believe that Georgia wins this football game. Those are the keys. But the bigger question, of course, is can the Dogs do that? Can the Dogs check off all four of those boxes? And when you look at this game, guys, moving into my final prediction here, a lot of people, when the line first came out this week, what was it? I think it was initially 6.5, and now it's moved up to around 7.5 right now. Last time I looked, a lot of people, both within and without outside the Georgia fan base, have expressed some measure of surprise at Georgia being favored by 7.5 points in this game, which, to be honest with you guys, I have found kind of interesting. It's been fun to watch. It's been fascinating to listen to the conversation on this game, to see people be so surprised that Georgia is more than a touchdown favorite against Ole Miss. Because somewhere along the way, guys, I don't know exactly when it happened, somewhere along the way over the last 3 years, people got it into their minds that Ole Miss is now some sort of juggernaut. And offensively, they are. They are. And people get it's tantalizing, right? They get fooled by these offenses that put up big points, like you score 60 plus points against Georgia State. So I get to a degree where it comes from. They have been really good for the last 3 years. More importantly, when you look at this matchup specifically, Georgia and Ole Miss, everyone watched Ole Miss in a big spot last year, late in the season, November, dominate Georgia in a way that, quite frankly, I have not seen a Georgia team get dominated, I think, ever under Kirby Smart. Even 2016, like we lost some games in 2016, we didn't get dominated physically, manhandled the way that we did on the road in Oxford last year. I was there in the stadium, and a lot of you were, and it was like, I thought we could lose the game. I was concerned about that game in a big way, but I didn't see it going down the way that it did, being fully dominated that way. And so when that happened, it created a perception that a year later is still lingering. People still can't get that out of their minds because they haven't seen Georgia Ole Miss play since that point. So it's kind of created this perception that Ole Miss is this ascending program, while Georgia, yes, this once great program that won back-to-back national titles, is a declining program. I think that's kind of the general perception out there, certainly outside the Georgia fan base. I think even some people within the Georgia fan base are starting to feel that way. But here's the thing, guys. Perceptions, as we know, are not always rooted in reality, especially perceptions in the world of college football. We get wrapped up in things that sometimes don't always matter, that aren't always indicative of who is a good team and who is not. Sure, Ole Miss beat us last year, guys. I told you, they manhandled us, man. I'm not going to try to make excuses for that. Like, they did. They flat out beat us. But let's also think about what happened the year prior. It wasn't all that long ago that Ole Miss came to Athens, and oh, yeah, they got whipped 52-17. We whipped them more than they whipped us a year ago. But, Georgia does that to a lot of teams, so it doesn't stick out in people's minds the way that last year's beating did, because that never really happens to Georgia. But how quickly do we forget these things? We do. We tend to forget these things very quickly. We have a very short memory in the world of college football. So, yeah, last year was bad, man. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't. It was bad. It was disgusting. Awful, man. I still have nightmares about how that went down. But let's be real. Let's be real. Let's be objective here. There was also a lot of context to that game and the way that game went. Ole Miss guys last year had, in my opinion, the best front six in all of America. They led the country in sacks per game. They led the country by a pretty good margin in tackles for loss per game. They had 4 sacks a game last year, nearly 10 tackles for loss a game last year. They went out, they got Walter Nolan, Princely Mamiellan, already had J.J. Pegues, and they loaded up in that defensive front six. And if you remember, guys, in that game, we were hurt all year on the offensive line. That game in particular, we had an absolute mash unit out there on the offensive line. It was ugly. We didn't have even the guys that were out there playing like Dylan Fairchild. The guy didn't practice all week. He was going out there just gritting his teeth and trying to do it for the G. But I mean, he should have been out there, and that's what we had going up against what I think was the best front in the entire country last year. It was a mismatch from the jump. And give Lane Kiffin credit, guys. He came to Athens, got whipped 52-17 in 2023. And he talked about this openly. He realized after that game that if he's ever going to win a game like that, beat a team like Georgia that's as good in the trenches as we are, he had to go out and address his trench play. Ole Miss, quite simply, had not been good enough for at any point defensively, certainly on the defensive front, but even on the offensive front, they hadn't been good enough there either. So he went out and did about as good of a job as you could possibly do heading into 2024 addressing their issues in the trenches and getting guys from the portal to fix that issue. And you saw it. They flat out owned us in the trenches last year. That's what happened. But it ain't 2024 anymore, guys. It's not. Those guys, Princely Umanmielen, Walter Nolan, JJ Pegues, they are no longer on this football team. They will not be a factor on Saturday between the hedges. Their defensive front has gone from being one of the best defensive fronts, maybe, in my opinion, the best defensive front in the country last year, to this season, pretty clearly, if you watch them, being a liability. And let me give you some numbers to back that up, guys. They gave up 191 yards to Georgia State. I know it was week one, but 191 yards rushing to Georgia State. Georgia State, guys, has won one game on the year, and they are currently 130th nationally in rushing offense. And that Georgia State team put up almost two bills on that Ole Miss defense. Kentucky, 65th nationally in rushing offense, put up 172 on Ole Miss. Arkansas, who does run the ball well, they're a top 20 rushing offense, but they put up 221 on this Ole Miss defense. Tulane, 176. A G5 program rushed for 176 yards against this Ole Miss defense. So to me, when you look at those numbers, and if you watch the tape, guys, you see it on the tape. This Ole Miss defensive front is far more like the 2023 Ole Miss front than the 24 version. A lot closer to that. So Georgia is the team in this game with the advantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball once again, just like Georgia was the team with the advantage in the trenches in 2023. It's not as one-sided as it was in 2023. I don't think that we're quite as good in the trenches as we were 2 years ago, but this season, this game, we are still better in the trenches than Ole Miss is. And we have seen what it looks like when this Ole Miss program gets outclassed in the trenches. We have verifiable evidence of what that looks like. And look, guys, I know that we are banged up in the offensive line. I get it. I know. We were banged up last year, so to some degree, it is a concern that we're not fully healthy in the offensive line. But think about this, too. Last weekend, despite those injuries on the offensive line, Georgia didn't dominate up front against that Auburn defensive front, but we at least held our own against what I believe is the best defensive front that Georgia will see all during the regular season. And we did that on the road at night. Now we get to come home to play one of the two worst defensive fronts that we'll see all year, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, that at least we'll see in SEC play. And get this, we're healthier now on the offensive line. Monroe Freeling, a week healthier. He's listed as probable. Ernest Green, actually, believe it or not, listed as probable on the injury report. Juan Gaston had to go out late in the Auburn game. He's listed as probable in this game as well. So we're healthier up front than even we were a week ago. And even last week, as banged up as we were, we held our own against a really, really, really talented Auburn defensive front. So to me, this Georgia run game versus the Ole Miss rush defense is the single biggest matchup advantage for either team in this game. Ole Miss does have an advantage where their ability to create some explosive plays, and we've had some trouble stopping explosive plays, but that's not as big of an advantage as the Georgia run game against this Ole Miss rush defense. So I do believe that Georgia will exert its will in this football game on the ground against the 14th ranked rush defense in the SEC. In particular, I do think Georgia will have success attacking the edges of the Ole Miss defense. In the process, will control the clock, limit possessions, limit the amount of points we have to score. That will also set up some explosive opportunities for us to hit some plays down the field off of play action in the second half. And again, generally force Ole Miss to play our game. That's important, guys. Force them to play our game. We don't want to get caught up playing their game. So as long as the Dogs avoid the turnover bug in this game, you never know. Like turnovers, like it's random. You never know what that's going to look like. But if we can avoid that, I like Georgia to win this game and win this game relatively comfortably. 31-21, Dogs on top. So there you go, guys. That's my prediction. Could Ole Miss win this game? Absolutely, Ole Miss can win this football game. They are a good team, but I really like the matchup here, that Georgia run game against the Ole Miss defense. I think that will allow us to control the clock, limit possessions, and get out of this game with a nice, solid win against a top 5 opponent. Let's go, baby. We'll see how it turns out. Whether I get it right or wrong, I'll be right back here on Sunday to break down what happened in this big top 10 matchup between Georgia and Ole Miss. So again, guys, if you're a diehard Georgia fan, Everything we do here, just like this episode, is produced for you. So make sure to subscribe right now, like the video, and comment. What is your prediction? How do you see this game playing out? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, guys. So thank you so much for being here. I greatly, greatly appreciate your support. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.